So if everybody could just take a second and close your eyes. I want you to think about a moment. Maybe you're at a restaurant, maybe at your family's house, a moment when you were eating, maybe with friends or family. Think about the way that food tasted. Think about that conversation, that joy you felt eating that food. I grew up in a house where food was central to the way we communicated. If anyone else out there grew up in a Jewish household, first thing you get is something to eat every single second of the day, so food's really important. But the idea around the preparation of that food was important. I also grew up in a house with generations, so my grandmother taught me how to cook, my father was a great cook, my mother is a great cook, my sister. So food was very important, and I started to associate joy with that, and the love of sharing that joy with people became critical and paramount in my life. Unfortunately, when I did dedicate my life to the preparation of food in the service of others as a professional chef, I realized that there was a lot of the experience of preparing food in a professional arena wasn't full of joy. It wasn't full of great bonding memories between me and my grandmother or my mother or my father. It was full of anger and shame and fear and a gastronomic caste system that separated people based on their job title. It sought to humiliate people in order to push them to become a better version of themselves. And as I started in the business, I realized that this was just the way things were going to be. I'm going to have to just push through this, and this is the important part of my growth. I'll accept this. And then as I moved through the system over the last 20 years or so, I got to meet some great mentors, and they taught me some different lessons, and that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. My wife and I built a business here in this small city of North Adams to create a different food environment, one in which our mission of putting better food on the tables of those within our community could be the foundation, and one in which we didn't have to fall into the same pitfalls and fear-based hierarchical structure that exists in so many restaurants today. Once we had that mission clear to put that food on the table with as much love and care, we started to take apart the pieces. Now, a little backstory, I spent the year before we decided to open this restaurant telling my wife and every single person I knew that opening a restaurant was the stupidest thing that anyone could ever possibly do. Restaurants are expensive, they lose money, and they're full of pain and agony. So my wife asked me the question, if we were gonna do this, how would we do it? And so we decided to take it apart piece by piece. First, we decided that we would talk about accessibility. That meant creating a menu that meant something different. That also meant creating a price point that meant something different. We talked about the staff, the way we'd hire people. We talked about the culture, what it meant to work with us, not for us. And then we talked about the overall way we would deal with success and failure, because those things come hand in hand together. And in the restaurant business, usually it's more failure than success. So, accessibility. We looked at price. Now, in this community, and in communities similar to this across this country and of course across the world, things like fast food become the first choice for folks who are eating out. We looked at those prices and we figured that if we were maybe 10%, 15% more than that, then we could attract a group of a community that would sometimes feel alienated when new restaurants come into town. If you're willing to pay this much, maybe you'd be willing to pay a little bit more for a story and something new in your community. This became really easy for us to decide that barbecue is the best thing to do. It's simple, we'd make it our own. I'm a Russian-Hungarian Jew from Connecticut, and my wife is Australian, so there's no connection or lineage to the South or barbecue in general. But I was a butcher for many years, and she's an incredible bread baker, so we just said we'll make it our own thing and we'll call it Berkshire Barbecue. A little bit of pride for this western part of Massachusetts, and something delicious that we know everybody will enjoy. Now we needed to talk about the kind of people that we wanted to bring into this business, and for us, I didn't go to culinary school. My wife has some formal training, actually more than me, but for us it was important to find people that had the things that we couldn't train. You can't teach empathy. You can't teach compassion. You can't teach character and integrity. But if we are supposed to be the experts in this business, that means that we are the ones responsible for training these people. So we hired people with no experience. In fact, it was a prerequisite. You can't have any experience. You just have to look us in the eye. We have to like you. And we figured that if we pulled together enough people who liked one another, then it's our responsibility to teach them how to cook. I spent 20 years in the kitchen. I know how to cook. It's my job to teach you. So that responsibility fell on us. After that, it was about culture. The culture for us was about building a space where people felt safe. I won't go into the details of what it feels like to be shamed in a 3-star restaurant, but let me tell you, it's not a great experience. You can be reduced to nothing and question your life's meaning. And in fact, your life's meaning will be questioned by those above you. And they will ask you terrible questions to make you second-guess everything. And every single day, you will ask yourself, is today the day I'm going to be fired? This is a story that was shared to me by one of my friends in the industry, and it's true. You go into work every day thinking this is the day it's going to be over. And we didn't want to create that environment. So we decided that we weren't going to yell. We weren't going to scream. We weren't going to get stressed and angry, because if there was failure, it was our fault as owners. And I say fault in the most generous way. It was our responsibility to retrain our staff, because if we had the expectation that they were going to figure it out the first time or before they even came here, if we expected that they were so smart that they would just figure it out, then we would be batting our heads against the wall and we'd be out of business in 6 months. We also wanted to make sure that people felt as though their efforts were directly related to the amount of money they were making. So instead of creating a separation between the front of house and the back of house, a separation that usually breeds a lot of animosity in the food business, we decided that everyone was going to get paid more or less the same amount, and that all of the effort was going to be split between everybody, because we didn't hire positions. We hired people. And their contribution, whether it was washing a dish one moment, helping a customer, prepping vegetables, making a sandwich, they were all important to the contribution of the success of the business together. And maybe this was a little bit sort of a new concept for restaurants, but it just made sense to us. When we went to eat at a restaurant, maybe the waiter was bringing the food over, but the glass needed to be clean, the plate needed to be clean, the restaurant needed to be clean, the vegetables were prepared with care, and there's an unfairness that breeds hate and anger that the chefs aren't even responsible for. By separating people in such difficult categories, it makes it impossible for a team to work together. Then we talked about the space. What is it about restaurants that are expensive? Well, you're all sitting in some of them. Chairs, tables, glasses, flatware, plates. We said we'll get rid of all that. In fact, no seating in the restaurant at all. Our location allowed us to work symbiotically with a restaurant next door, with another food business that didn't have any food, but they had seating. So we took advantage of the opportunity that was in front of us, and we allowed ourselves to say, we're going to say no to this, and we're going to see what happens, because we're going to own what we do, and we're going to train our people to be excited about saying no. What was interesting is that it allowed us to communicate with each guest one at a time. The way a great waiter or a great captain would treat you when you walk into a 3-Michelin-starred restaurant, we were going to talk to each guest one at a time and give them the guaranteed kind of service that we wanted to have. The food is delivered to them next door, and the truth is that when they're standing out in the cold ordering food, once they hear that we're going to bring the food to them in the warm brewery, they thank us. So it becomes really great, really easy to give great service. Success and failure were the next 2 big topics that we needed to really tackle. And of course, success feels good. It feels good to make money. It feels good to know that something that you had an idea about can work. And you see that directly. But it was also about how we showed our appreciation to our staff. We didn't wait for a big evening, a stellar evening where we served the most meals ever. Yes, we congratulated our staff then, but we also made sure that we were talking to them on a regular basis. By giving them constant feedback, positive and negative, in a calm and respectful way, we began to empower them to take more responsibility over the jobs that we were assigning to them. So as young cooks, as young people, they're still bringing their life experiences to us. But now we have a chance to show them, you're doing great. I know this was challenging for you. Thank you for contributing. What do you think we can do to make this easier? And watch them train their friends and the people within the community about what they've learned. And so now that means that us as owners, my wife and I, get to step back. We don't have to micromanage because our people are committed to helping one another because they know what it feels like to feel good about it. Failure, obviously, goes part and parcel. Now, I say this with not too much ego, but we haven't had a terrible amount of failure so far. I'm sure it's coming. But we do know that when our employees fail, the first response is not to blame them. The first response is to look at the situation. One, was everybody clear about the vision that we had to make this restaurant great, to serve this meal? Two, did everybody understand the work that was required and expected after we've trained? Three, did everyone understand and communicate with each other about the help that they possibly needed? And four, what are we going to do about it afterwards? This kind of talk allowed us to be calm when we approached failure, when something wasn't cleaned the way it was supposed to be cleaned, when something wasn't cut or served the way it was supposed to be. This gave us a chance to say to them, okay, let's take a step back, let's assess, and they don't feel beaten down. And I know that it can sound like we are not communicating our issue, but you'd be surprised at what level of pride people take when they know that their failure does not mean the end of their career. It means that they're growing, and you're willing to invest in their growth. Now, this is all great talk, but I have a story to share that kind of sums up a moment that we experienced recently. And I think it brings it back to the idea of what it means to build this kind of restaurant family. A few weeks ago, we had to let some people go. Now, if we talk about failure, that was our responsibility. We didn't have a plan going into the winter, and unfortunately, we were a little bit too hopeful that we were going to keep making enough money to support these people, but we just couldn't. We had to make a decision. And because we're the owners of this business, we felt as though it fell on us to decide. This is our job to do this. This is the dirty work that we signed up for, and we had the conversations that needed to be had. It was not easy, and it was not a short conversation. We thought long and hard about it. How are we going to make this work? So we had the conversation with those people, and a couple days later, one of our team members came up to me in the office and pulled me aside and said, I needed a couple days to cool down. I was really upset. And I speak for the rest of the team here because we're all angry at you. Because if you had come to us with this request, this need, this emergency, all of us would have given up a day to keep these guys on the team. We all would have made a sacrifice for the greater good of the business. For me, the first feeling I felt was embarrassment. I was humiliated, horrified. I felt so sad that I had done something so foolish to not think to include these team members, these family members in this kind of decision. And then I kind of felt proud. I felt like this was what we wanted to do. And right on cue, this team member said, if you talk about building this kind of business where we're all family, then you have to include us in these decisions because we're all willing to put up or shut up. We're all willing to be here for the greater good of this business. And so when I think about what I wanted, what my wife and I wanted, what this business means to us, the idea of being in service of others, that's really what restaurants are. They're about giving a piece of yourself, a memory, a dish to someone else, a stranger, and then building an experience around that table. We wanted this, and we built it. And so far, it's been good. And I'm sure we'll have our troubles. But it provokes a bigger question, which is, what is the future of this industry? An industry that supports not just the good, but the bad. Drug abuse, stress, anger, fear, depression, low pay, no pride in the work, and certainly a part-time job on your way to some other greater path. We knew that if we were going to take this challenge, we just wanted good people to be feeling that they were going to be better on the back end of their experience with us than they were at the beginning. And so when we think about what we accomplished, it's because of North Adams. It's because of cities outside of the major metropolitan areas that give chefs and small business owners an opportunity to risk a different model and hopefully provide a future pathway towards a business that can support people from all walks of life and not leave the tread marks over their bodies and over their emotional psyche for the generations to come. If we are going to be the people leading and teaching as chefs and as owners in our particular case, then it's our job to leave something better behind for us. And so when I think about what the dynamic means, how we need to change it, it's removing this fear, this anger that exists from chefs hell-bent to prove that they know something and wanting to prove it at all costs, certainly at the cost of the mental health of their employees. That if we replace that with a different level of compassion, accessibility, accountability, removing the shame from failure, and knowing that growth is expected when you start something for the first time. Thank you very much.